Hi everybody, it's Miss Howell. We're going to talk about the urinary system today, which is Module 15. Look for the red words like you always do and fill in your guided notes. Last week you didn't have a video or guided notes, so we're going to begin with this video recapping what you learned last week on your own. So let me go quickly through these items and then we'll move on to the new stuff. So the urinary system, also called the excretory system, is the main excretion system of your body. We talked about the digestive system also removes waste in your feces. Well, this is another system that removes another kind of waste. It's the number one means by which your body gets rid of toxins. It also helps to control the level of ions in your body. It controls the amount of water within your body, which is very important, and also controls the pH of your blood, and also controls the red blood cell production. The basic anatomy of the urinary system, when you first look at it, seems really simple. You've just got a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, the urinary bladder, and a urethra. That doesn't look like a whole lot, but there's a whole lot of detail going on within the kidney. Most of your system's work is done by the kidneys, and that's where we're going to focus our time. So your kidneys lie behind the other major organs within your peritoneal cavity. They're not included in the peritoneal cavity itself, they're back behind, so we call this position retroperitoneal. Retro meaning behind. So retroperitoneal cavity is where your kidneys are locating, back here in your lower back or the flank area. And they're held firmly in place. Sorry, my dog is barking. They're held firmly in place by a layer of fat. That layer of fat helps to keep the kidneys from moving around, which could be dangerous. If your kidneys started moving around, then the ureter that leads from the kidneys down to the bladder could get pinched off, like taking a garden hose and kinking the garden hose to shut off water flow. Well, you don't want to shut off urine flow because then it would back up into your kidneys, and that's dangerous. So the kidneys are bean-shaped organs. Each one of them is about the size of your clenched fist. The inside of the kidney is split into two major regions. You've got the cortex, which is the outer part, and then in the very center is the medulla. The functional part of the kidney is called a nephron. So here's a diagram I want you to look at. It's similar to the one in your book. The main difference between this one and the one in your book is they don't have the label for this grouping of things right here. This is where blood enters the nephron at what's called the renal corpuscle. The renal corpuscle is made up of two things, the glomerulus, which is the network of capillaries, and the Bowman's capsule, which is the beginning of the nephron itself. Then we move into the proximal convoluted tubule, or the proximal tubule, which is still in the cortex, the outer portion. As we move down into the medulla, we go into the descending arm or limb of the loop of Henle, and then up the ascending limb of the loop of Henle, and then we exit out of the medulla back into the cortex again and go through the distal tubule, the far side, and then we move back down again into the medulla, and that's the collecting duct. Each one of your kidneys has 1.3 million nephrons. So that diagram you just looked at, picture there's 1.3 million of them in each one of your kidneys. You can't survive if fewer than 1/3 of them are functioning properly. But you can donate a kidney. You could live with only one fully functioning kidney, which is, people do that sometimes. Kidneys make your urine, which we've obviously understood, but we also are using your kidneys to remove waste from your body, and waste includes extra electrolytes, toxins, and water. So urine is formed following 4 basic steps, and there was an analogy in your textbook about a desk drawer, so maybe you remember that. You should go back and read it if you don't, because it was really very helpful for me, and I'm sure it would be for you. So step 1 is the glomerular filtration. That's where the capillary network enters into that Bowman's capsule and creates filtrate. Filtrate is everything from your blood gets dumped into this area except the blood cells and proteins. So imagine the blood vessel now only contains red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and protein molecules, but all the liquid components, all of the other components that are in the plasma, including electrolytes and glucose and hormones, all of those get dumped into the Bowman's capsule. The rate that all of that moves in is 125 milliliters of your urine gets pushed in there every minute. Glomerular filtration rate then is 125 mils per minute. Now the glomerular capillary pressure is correlated to that rate. This is going to be on your test, so put a star here and make sure you understand this. Know that if your capillary pressure in the glomerulus is high or elevated, then the filtration rate is going to be higher. You're pushing more blood through, it's going to filter out faster, so you're going to have a higher rate. If the capillary pressure is low, if that GCP drops, then the filtration rate is going to drop as well. So they're correlated together at the same. The second step is reabsorption, and that's when the useful chemicals get returned back to the blood, because your body needs to hang on to those, and it brings them back in the correct amounts. So put a star by this for your test. Reabsorption is movement from the nephron back into the capillary. Cells of the proximal tubule have these little extensions there called a brush border to increase surface area to help the movement of these chemicals back in. Those are like the microvilli of the digestive system that we studied before. Also, for substances that have to have a carrier molecule to bring them back in, say maybe they're too large to slide through passive transport, they might need active transport and a carrier molecule. Well, they have this thing called the Tmax, or tubular maximum, and that's the maximum rate of reabsorption by active transport through the nephron tubules. So if a substance has to be transported via active transport, but there are no available carriers for them, it's already exceeded the Tmax. So those things are going to automatically become waste if they've exceeded the Tmax and they're excreted in urine. So put a star by that. That's going to be on your test. Small molecules, though, like water, which is just H2O, very tiny molecules, they can be reabsorbed passively, no energy needed. They just follow osmosis, the movement from high to low concentration. Secretion is step 3. That's where the harmful or maybe excessive chemicals, you've got too much sodium in your system, that's when those are put into the blood during reabsorption. They've got to be turned around and moved back out again. So this is movement from the capillary to the nephron so that the nephron can put it into the urine and you can get rid of it. So this occurs in the distal tubule. So secretion happens in the distal tubule. It's the movement from the capillary back to the nephron. Put that star on that one too. Potassium ions and hydrogen ions are secreted in this way. You get rid of those, and that helps to control pH, moving those hydrogen ions. And the very last step is water reabsorption, and that's when the water enters the nephron, and then the blood reabsorbs only the amount of water that it needs and leaves all the rest of the water for you to form the principal component of your urine. The interstitial fluid in the kidneys is a whole lot more concentrated than that of the rest of the body, and that's to help that osmotic pressure. The descending limb in the loop of Henle is permeable to water and solutes, so they can pass in and out through that loop easily. The ascending limb, though, is not permeable to water. And then you move into the distal tubule and the collecting ducts, and their permeability varies based on your body's needs. So you have this hormone that your body produces in the brain called the ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, that helps to either conserve water or get rid of water depending on what your body needs at the time. So the more ADH that your body produces, the more of that hormone that's present, that makes the distal tubule and collecting duct more permeable to water, and that lets you hang on to more water. So your kidneys' nephrons are performing all 4 of those steps that we just mentioned on about 1 liter of blood every minute. So that's your renal blood flow rate, is about 1 liter a minute. So now we're going to talk about the last parts of the chapter. Those are the previous things you learned on your own, so let's move on with what's left. So now we made urine, and now it's time for you to store it and get rid of it. Well, this happens in the urinary bladder, and that's an organ that's about the size of your thumb when it's empty. Let me get that in the screen here. So about the size of your thumb when it's empty. Did you know your bladder was that small? There's a pair of sphincters, your favorite word, the internal and external sphincters, that control the emptying of the bladder whenever it stretches and becomes full. In addition to creating urine and excreting waste, your kidneys also play a role in regulating your blood pressure, because the volume of blood that you have determines the amount of pressure they exert on your blood vessels. When the juxtaglomerular cells, those are cells that are right up next to the glomerulus, when they detect a drop in your blood sodium levels, or they detect a drop in blood pressure, they respond by beginning with this cascade of events that happen with a whole lot of different hormones and chemicals that will help raise your blood pressure back to normal levels. So let me read through these really quick. Renin is an enzyme produced by those juxtaglomerular cells if your blood sodium level is low. That leads to another chemical being produced. Renin helps to produce angiotensinogen. Angiotensinogen then helps to produce angiotensin 1 and angiotensin 2. Those two chemicals increase vasoconstriction. They squeeze your blood vessels tight. That reduces blood flow, helps you to hang on to your blood, and it helps with the blood pressure, helps to raise it back up. These chemicals are going to create a desire for water. You're going to get thirsty. And it also increases your salt appetite. So if you ever crave something salty, your body's trying to tell you something. That salt then is also going to help release aldosterone, another chemical, which is going to increase sodium reabsorption in the kidneys to help your kidneys bring sodium back into your body, into the bloodstream. And when you bring sodium back into your bloodstream, water follows sodium. Water follows salt. So your blood will absorb more of the water and your blood pressure will rise. And at the same time, you'll notice that your urine is more concentrated because your body's holding on to more of the water. All right, now moving on to the acid-base balance in your body. Your normal blood pH range is from 7.35 to 7.45. You're slightly basic. Acidosis is any drop lower than 7.35, and getting close to 7.0 is not consistent with life. When you get to that range of acidosis, you decrease your nervous function and it can lead to coma and ultimately death. The opposite of this is alkalosis. That's when your pH rises above 7.45. This can also lead to an overexcitement of the nervous system, causing convulsions and even death. So the body controls your acid-base balance 3 different ways, and then we'll wrap up with this. This is our last thing today. You've got the buffer system, which is a mixture of weak acids and weak bases within your bloodstream that help resist changes in pH. So it's a quick method, but it's pretty inefficient overall. So the buffer system is there, and it works quickly, but it's not very efficient. The respiratory system that we studied a week ago or a couple of weeks ago also regulates your blood pH. It's a little bit slower in moving your pH levels, but it's more effective than the buffer system. If you remember, when we change the rate and the depth in which we breathe, that affects the amount of carbon dioxide in our blood. We can blow off more when we breathe deeply. That will help alter our blood pH. But lastly, the kidney function. It can secrete hydrogen ions. The more hydrogen ions that are secreted, the higher your blood pH becomes. It's the slowest process for balancing the acid base in your body, but it's the most efficient. Its detection of pH and the alteration of the secretion of these hydrogen ions happens in the distal tubules. Now, all 3 of these things are going to be on your test, so you need to know which one is quick, which one is slow, which one is the slowest, which one is inefficient, which one is a little bit more efficient, and which one is the most efficient. So make sure you get all of those together in your notes for the next test. And all of these things we've talked about today, this seemingly very simple body system that just has 2 kidneys, ureters or bladder, and a urethra, which is the exit from the body, just goes to show us that once again, you truly are fearfully and wonderfully made. Have a great week.